Thank you so much, Mr. Albero, for joining us here at SU. I want to get right into it and ask you simply, why are you running for mayor of Salisbury?
Well, Eli, I've spent the last 8 years with Salisbury News critiquing and criticizing the different leaders in Salisbury, and I felt after 8 years of criticizing, someone needs to step up and actually introduce a different vision and a different kind of leadership for Salisbury.
Now, you mentioned the criticism, especially of the leaders. Do you think that will hurt you when you have to work with some of those same people if elected?
No, not at all. It's constructive criticism. I mean, one of the things I've found that's always been difficult here on the Eastern Shore is people needing to agree to disagree. And that's something I do very well. So I don't think it's going to be an issue.
And if elected, what would be number one on your agenda?
I would start with crime. Crime still has a long way to go here in Salisbury. You know, we've got a great chief of police. We certainly need to give her more time to get things right here in Salisbury, but we're on the right path, and I think that's going to be the number one thing we need to work on.
So when you talk about crime and how far it has to go, we have made great strides. Do you think that if you had been mayor, the strides would have been greater? Do you think that you would have done things differently to bring down crime even more?
Well, perhaps. I mean, I won't micromanage like the current mayor. You know, I'm a firm believer. I'm a retired businessman. I have a very large manufacturing company and had a lot of employees. I couldn't do everything. And as a CEO of a company, you have to delegate. Different positions have to do different things. I believe that Chief Duncan has plenty of ability to do what she needs to do. And whether it would have been better, I couldn't say that. I don't know.
You talk about your experience in business. What experiences specifically running a manufacturing company will help you if elected mayor?
Well, one of the first things that I plan on doing, if you said what was your second thing you'd like to do, Salisbury needs an economic development director. We need good paying jobs. We've got three great universities around us. Once these students graduate, they leave, and you can't blame them. There's not really good paying jobs or careers here. So one of the things I'd like to do is the mayor's position is a part-time job. I'm going to make it a full-time job, and I'm not going to ask for more pay. I'm just going to turn around and take half of my day and become the economic development director so that it doesn't cost the taxpayers for another position. And since I relocated my manufacturing company from the Annapolis area to here, to the Eastern Shore, I know the advantages. I know what it takes to suggest to other companies that they relocate here. We've got an airport, we've got rail, we've got the beach a half an hour away. I mean, we've got everything there. The cost of purchasing land, buildings that are already erected, the cost of buying a home, the taxes on all the above versus going into the Annapolis area, it's like night and day. I mean, it's probably 80% less expense-wise. So we've also got, you go out into the Rockville area, for example, Potomac, Rockville, Gaithersburg, you've got all these stem cell research companies out there. This is Montgomery County where you're paying probably some of the highest taxes you'll find in the state of Maryland. No one has ever, in the last 16 years that I'm aware of, has ever reached out to the business community and asked them to relocate here. You know, you can't wait for these businesses to fall in your lap like we've seen for the last 16 years. That's the only way businesses come here. And what we've seen is more of these big companies leaving this area and the leaders here ignoring how important it is for these companies to stick around in our area.
You know, you talked about some differences a little bit between you and the mayor, but what do you see as the biggest differences between you and the mayor's approach to governing Salisbury?
Well, the major difference to me is, you know, he is a part-time school teacher with no business experience. He's very charismatic. He's a very nice guy. But the difference is we've got a business to run, and that's what I'm excellent at. I didn't retire at 40 for nothing. I'm very good at what I do.
And throughout various debates and forums, we hear plans of the revitalization of Salisbury downtown. What's your stance on that? What are your plans about that? What do you think needs to be done moving forward?
Well, it's out of the box, and my intentions with downtown Salisbury are really to turn it into more of a Bourbon Street New Orleans. I want to get rid of the parking meters downtown. That's one of the first things I want to do if I can get it done. I want to invite people to come downtown. We're working now, Salisbury, working on a bike trail from Salisbury University to the downtown. For what? What's there? When are you going to come? We'd be better off coming up here. We'd have more things to do coming in the other direction, coming out your way to Salisbury University, than you would going downtown. So that has to be revitalized. And for the last 20 some odd years, well, however long the old mall shut down, it's just gone downhill. And no one has really truly taken, and again, this is about the leadership and the difference between Jim Ireton or Barry Tillman and myself. You have to have a business mind. You have to know how to go about attracting businesses downtown. These little feel-good kind of, let's do this, let's do arts that, it's nice, but it doesn't work. We're not going to bring retail back downtown. So I'm thinking if we go more towards a Bourbon Street, a destination location. You know, we'll take it and close it down on Friday night, Saturday night, and have just an adult entertainment, kind of like I believe it's called Pleasure Island in Disney World, something very, very similar to that, where, you know, you have different cultures, different blues, Irish pubs, you know, restaurants, dining, you know, things along that line throughout the short part of the plaza. Once that grows, then you can expand around towards Market Street and then down towards 13, where the hotel is on 13.
And what about working with the city council to making some of these changes? It's been very difficult at points for this mayor, who is even more closely aligned politically with many of the council members than you would be. How would you work with them to ensure that these changes were made?
Well, first of all, I don't think he's more politically connected. That's number one. Number two, you have to have a mayor that brings things to the table that can actually be achieved. What we've seen, you know, you keep hearing the council of no's and things along that nature. That's just not true. You know, 90% of what's been brought in front of this council has been passed. So that's number one. Number two, you know, Jim's plans for revitalizing the downtown area, it's 25, 30 years old. We're in 2013, not in 1995. I mean, you know, we've got to turn around and change things that are more modern, more up to speed with what we're dealing with today, and what the youth of today that's going to ultimately grow old here is going to enjoy. There were plans such as the downtown revitalization that the council just felt they didn't agree with, that there were better ideas and perhaps the next mayor could come up with a better one. So they rejected that. The Bricks project, $300,000 small apartments that we're going to rent for $300 a month. Didn't make financial sense. You know, there are many projects that were brought forth to the council that the council couldn't legally say yes to. The 12 firefighters, for example. Of course the council wanted to move forward with that. But the problem was the mayor signed a federal grant as the legislative body. He's not the legislative body, so they said no. Ultimately, it saved the city taxpayers $400,000. So I don't think the council is that difficult to work with. I think you need the proper leadership to present legislation in the right timing as well. Things have to go through the legislative body from the beginning. You can't just shock them at the 11th hour at the last minute and present legislation and expect them to pass it. You know, a lot of these things did pass second, third time around when it was brought forward. But that's, I think, part of the complication we're dealing with.
And what about the environment? You know, sustainability is something that we hear a lot about today. Do you have any plans to decrease Salisbury's carbon footprint?
Ooh. That's foreign to me, to be totally truthful with you. That's foreign. I mean, I was in a lighting business. I know all about how to do so with the lighting. But as far as the rest of it, you know, I think that has to do with more with the state legislation and federal legislation than anything else. I mean, certainly we can impress upon different business owners to go green, but I just don't think that's more along the mayor's job.
And what about the university? You know, obviously Salisbury University is a big part of Salisbury. Do you have plans to improve that relationship, which is already a good relationship? What are your plans, if elected mayor, to how to handle Salisbury University? Well,
certainly it's an incredible partnership, I would work with the leaders in Salisbury University in every which way I possibly can. We have to encourage that. It's a good question, and one of the things that concerns me the most is, have we really seen leaders working with Salisbury University? Do you want the students to come here from all over the country to go to school and leave? Why hasn't the leadership figured it out yet that we need to create manufacturing jobs, good paying jobs, technical jobs like stem cell research and different things? You know, I'm seeing Salisbury University do more work than the city of Salisbury is doing for Salisbury University. I see the opposite. I'd love to change that.
I want to talk to you about some of the perception maybe about your website. You've even said that the Daily Times has unfairly labeled you as a racist at points. You know, there's a perception that, you know, there's a lot of mean-spirited things coming from your website. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, mean-spirited on whose behalf? Certainly not on my behalf.
Well, there's a perception out there at times that some of the articles have
Well,
been.
certainly. There are comments, you know, again, people need to agree to disagree. And there are certainly comments that can come in that can be more harsh than people want to see or read. We certainly moderate the nasty comments, as does any media source. But that's a First Amendment right, and I think everybody has the right to step up and give their opinion. You know, I've been asked by in a lot of different interviews why we would allow such comments or why we would allow people certain opinions, including the mainstream media. And I have to revert it back to them and say, do you want me to censor? Do you want me to take away people's First Amendment rights?
Okay, well, I guess we'll leave that there. Tell me about some of your political idols. Maybe some people that have inspired you, and maybe even not political, some people that have inspired you to run for office or that have helped guide you in your life.
Well, to run for office, what inspired me was very, very poor leadership. Very good old boy, very one-sided. A lot of favoritism towards a select group of people that really, really disturbed me. And of course, with Salisbury News, you know, we're about 13,500,000 hits. For a local blog, that's not so bad. It certainly beats the Daily Times and other local media for traffic. But the bottom line is, I get a good feel for what people want. And certainly they want a major change in leadership here, major. And they haven't had it. You know, anytime someone steps up to the plate, you get the charges of racism. You get the charges of my saying things that I didn't. You know what I mean? And it's easy to get that perception that was Joe Albero, when in fact it was a comment that came in on a post that we put up. You know, so sometimes it's hard to divide that. But it's easy for my opponent and others to attack me on. And I face that. I challenge that. I have no problem with that.
You talked about Salisbury News. I was reading, and recently I believe you guys are around 65,000 on the Alexa rating,
Yeah.
which, as you said, with all the websites and blogs out there,
It's over 2 billion.
Right, that's a large number. That's a low number, really.
Well, you got to explain it to the people, because
right.
the lower your number, like
the
Google's
better.
number one, so the lower your number, the better you are. So yeah, it's a pretty fascinating number.
Right, it is. And like you said, Salisbury is still a small town, if you will. So what do you think has been your success in running a site called Salisbury News?
Truth.
Okay.
The truth. And the truth is hard to take. Well, let me tell you a story real quick. I was doing an interview with Governor Martin O'Malley about 5 or 6 years ago. And I kind of showed up late. Not late, but he had just gotten started, and I walked up and he stopped what he was doing and he says, Joe, how you doing? I went, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I said, how are you, Governor? He says, Joe, he says, did I just read that you're the #1 blog in the state of Maryland? And I was kind of taken aback by it, and I said, well, yes and no. He says, no, he says, I'm telling you, I just read that on the way out here. I said, well, we're the most influential political blog in the state of Maryland and Delaware. He says, well, congratulations. I said, can I ask you a quick question? He says, sure. I said, you've got Baltimore, you've got Washington, and you've got Annapolis. Would you agree that that's probably the most influential political area in this country, let alone maybe the world? And he says, yeah. I said, and I own Salisbury News, and I'm on this little Eastern Shore, and I'm the #1 website in the state of Maryland and Delaware. Don't you think you need to pay more attention to what's going on out here? And his reply was, whenever I want to know what's going on in the Eastern Shore, I go to Salisbury News. It's a nice compliment.
It is. Mm-hmm. And I just want to ask you about that. You say pay more attention. Do you think that we're getting enough attention from Annapolis on the Eastern
Certainly.
Shore?
Certainly. You asked about crime earlier. Let's talk about that. I mean, if it wasn't for Salisbury News, it was very interesting. When I started Salisbury News, I chose to start promoting the crime that was going on in Salisbury. And after about a year or so of putting all this crime up, I'd run into people and they'd say, what the heck has happened here in Salisbury? Why is the crime so bad? I said, well, the crime's not any worse than it was. It's just that your local media never publicized it because you can't sell papers talking about crime. So it was just a matter of introducing people and letting them know that crime was that bad. And then ultimately we came to learn that Salisbury, I'm going to say about 5 years ago, was the 10th most dangerous city in America per capita. And then a few years ago, it was the 4th most dangerous city in America. And that, of course, gained, because the governor would follow Salisbury News on a regular basis, it gained enough attention for the governor to send $350,000 more dollars down to Salisbury to hire more police officers and start curbing that crime, because basically it was an embarrassment. So really, love us or hate us, the bottom line is we're putting information out there that's certainly helping this community.
If elected mayor, I mean, you talk about the importance of Salisbury News. If elected mayor, do you think that you would have to devote less time to Salisbury News? Would it take a hit your goals with that?
Certainly. There's no question in that. I've got some great people involved with me in Salisbury News who've been with me for many years, and I would reach out to them and ask for more help. My goal, look, let me put it to you this way. I've owned several businesses in my time. I've been successful at every single one of them. I don't touch anything that's just going to flat out fail. You know what I mean? I'm going after this because I know I can turn things around for Salisbury, and there's a lot of things that need to be turned around on all different levels. It's amazing, but I guess the key word for it would be leadership and making sure somebody's in there that can manage people, manage positions, and things that need to be done, what needs to be prioritized first to last, I mean, things along that line. But I will definitely, without a question, have to slow down with Salisbury News, without any question. I won't have the time to devote to it because I do plan on, again, bringing those businesses here. And if you don't mind me saying so, the key to bringing the businesses here to Salisbury is not just for students at Salisbury University to get a job. The infrastructure here is falling apart. I mean, it seems like, I couldn't tell you how many times a week we've got water main breaks all over the place in Salisbury. We're putting Band-Aids on very, very, very large wounds. The breaks, we go in and fix it. Breaks, we go in and fix it. It's always a catch game, We need to get ahead of that game. There's a lot of things the public is not aware of. The north side of town can't develop any further because there's not enough, the pipes aren't big enough to bring the water and sewer back to the wastewater treatment plant and so forth. The public's not generally aware of that. So we're kind of in a stagnant mode in certain areas. And if we don't get ahead of this game, we're not going to grow. And the problem with that is I'm firmly, firmly against raising taxes. So my goal would be bring these businesses to our industrial parks, our enterprise zones, get them established in here, and that tax base will help pay for the infrastructure, the infrastructure that continues to fail throughout Salisbury. I think out of the box. I try and do everything. When I say I want to get rid of the parking meters downtown, I've got a plan on how to remove the parking meters without it costing a penny to the taxpayers. When I come forward with a plan, it's going to be well thought all the way through so that it does not affect the taxpayers.
You talked about band-aiding problems, and one big problem in Salisbury is the Comico River. Where would that fall on your agenda? What are your plans for fixing that issue?
Well, Here's your situation. You know, you've got a governor that's talking about how septic systems are failing throughout the state, and that's what's polluting our bays and rivers. Yet, when you really dig into this information, the bottom line is it's our wastewater treatment plants, our municipal systems that are leaking heavily into our rivers and waterways and polluting our river. We have not been accountable for Lord knows how many years in Salisbury for that environmental disaster. And when I step in there, it's going to be fixed, and heads are going to roll, and people are going to lose jobs. If they don't do it right and get it done the first time around, they're fired. And I'm not afraid to step up to the plate and say it. I ran a business before, and we're going to do it right this time. But there's $140 million spent on this wastewater treatment plant, and we're not getting weekly updates and being told what's going on with it. I want to know. Once I become mayor, I will let the public know what's going on a regular basis. But I think that's the big key to start with the river. We'll keep swimming upstream every time we turn around and try and say we're going to clean this river, yet the wastewater treatment plant has another overflow, or one of the lift stations leaks out into the river like we've seen so many times before in Salisbury. These things have to be fixed, and that's part of the infrastructure. Has to be fixed. We have to get ahead of the game. But as we're losing businesses, and you see the for sale and for lease signs going up everywhere throughout Salisbury, we're going backwards. Now, how do we fix it? We have to raise taxes. Well, in business, as a manufacturer, we didn't have the luxury of turning around to the citizens in the community that I operated my manufacturing plants in and say, you know, we're failing. I need some of your money to come help bail me out. I don't believe in that. There are ways, you've got to be accountable and you fix it. And that's it, or you're out of business. If we're out of business, then we need to turn the city back over to the county.
I think we'll leave it there for questioning. Is there anything else you'd like to say to students of Salisbury or anybody else viewing this?
Well, I appreciate your time and opportunity to come in here and speak. As far as the students are concerned, I'm working on downtown. I'm working on it. I've got a fabulous plan to turn that around. Once we get going with that, it will expand all the way around again, down to Market Street, down to the Holiday Inn on the river. The Riverwalk's going to be vibrant by the time I'm done. We're going to be doing incredible things for that. And I hope we create a much better bond between the university and the city of Salisbury.
All right, thank you so much for
My
doing
pleasure.
this.
Thank you.